Welcome back to Driving with Marley, the podcast that shapes the future of family office investments and partnerships. Curt, what's going on, man? Great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
You bet, man. You bet. It's not a cup of coffee, but I always enjoy spending time with you.
Well, we named the podcast Driving with Marley, and I was a huge Seinfeld fan. And then, Jerry ended up doing, I think it was Driving in Cars with Comedians or something, if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was awesome. It was just him in a car with like these incredible characters. And so we're obviously not driving today, but I appreciate you being with us. Welcome to 2026, man. We were just talking about that before we got on air. How do you feel about 2026 and how this year's looking?
You know what? I am. Sometimes I pinch myself because I'm like, it's going to be the best year yet. But I'm super excited for 26. I mean, especially in the real estate business, we did a lot with organizational redesign and really have elevated. A lot of team members have elevated themselves. So it's a lot of good, a lot of growth, and I don't know. I should say this. So over the past years, like New Year's Eve. You can stay out and ring in the new year. So on the 30th, I said, you know what? I'm going to stay up till after midnight working on my 2026 goals. If I can go out and party and have fun, then I can be disciplined. And so I spent a lot of time on the evening of the 30th. Problem was I couldn't enjoy New Year's Eve because all the goals in my head. I got to get to work on these things.
Wow, you were at work on New Year's Eve. That's good, baby. That's how you roll into the year.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about it.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a big year for you. So let's baseline for the audience. I've had the great pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of years. We became quick friends. We're both here in Orlando, Florida. You've got an incredible company, WMG, that you work in almost every day. You guys are growing outside of that. You're getting more involved in the family office. So before we get started, just give everyone just the high-level overview. Curt Frost, where you grew up, what's important to you in life, and then WMG and what you're working on, just at a high level, and then we'll get into the details in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah. Wow. So I have to shorten it because I love to tell stories. But I grew up in a small town, thousand people, and my folks owned a business my entire life up until 2016, and so I grew up working in the family business. At 5 years old, go to kindergarten in the morning for a half a day. Walk across the street to the grocery store, and usually what I thought was I had a lot of important jobs to do. I think everybody was trying to keep me out of their way, but facing shelves, doing whatnot. And I've been shaped by a family business my entire life, and I didn't really realize what that meant at certain points in my life. And now my journey's brought me to a point where for the last 15 years, I've been working for a family, primarily working for one family who was, the gentleman was born in the same area. And so there's a lot of core values and similarities and stories and areas that we know are the same. And so it's just that, same culture, same growth on a much larger scale than what I was used to growing up. And I think that, that's what leads me to what I'm doing today. Family office work, all asset classes we've either looked at, invested in, what have you. And, the most active really is the real estate development company, which we have a nationwide retail platform. And then we have what we call our legacy development platform, which is much larger, concentrated, mixed use type of developments. And that's what I spend a lot of my time on, answering the call wherever needed, whenever needed,
Yeah. Well, you brought up something really interesting. Well, a couple things. So you mentioned you grew up in a small town and your parents owned a long-time business, a family business that you started working in at a young age. I think you said it was a grocery store, right? Like the local grocery store, which is, so kind of Americana. Like that sounds so cool, right? What do you think? And then you've had a great career, but you're working in a very different industry now. But you're applying, I assume, a lot of the same values that you perhaps were brought up with. What are some of the things that you look back on, at a young age, working in the grocery store at a small town, that now you're working with hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, huge assets, big real estate projects, big investments. To be fair, completely different than working in a grocery store in a small town. but I can tell you keep a lot of those values alive. What are the things that you try to pinch yourself? You talked about your New Year's resolutions and keep intact, even though you're on this big stage now, so much bigger than a small city and a grocery store.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking, because it helps me reflect. One of the biggest things my dad always used to say to me is be better tomorrow than you are today. And that's like stuck with these, and sometimes you're like, what does that mean? Well, it means exactly what it is. Be better than you. And then he used to say, well, if you didn't do very good today or you took the day off, tomorrow you got to work twice as hard.
Yeah.
And I think the things that I learned were work ethic. Number one, you had to have a work ethic. When you own your own business, people call in and you don't necessarily have extra resources, and so you're doing all the jobs sometimes. And I think the one huge thing was adaptability, or being okay with change and seeking change sometimes, because in a small business, things are just, they're not consistent day in and day out. If they are, then you probably are spending too much on systems and oversight, because you want a little chaos in a growing business, or you want to solve problems. And if you don't have any problems, then you're probably not trying to grow your business, or there's something that's idle, and I think the change, I mean, I'd go from facing shelves and making sure that all of them were stocked, to carrying out groceries. And we lived in a farm community. So, when there were folks come in from the farm to grab groceries or lunches for the farmers, if they were baling hay, my dad would say, hey, can you take my son with you? And I would literally get in the vehicle with somebody, maybe I didn't know, go bale hay. Luckily they'd give me some gloves, and you bale hay, and then you'd be like, well, I hope somebody drives me home or my dad comes and gets me. But I think those types of experiences I was thrust into uncomfortable situations, and you got to show up. And your personality, your leadership skills were vitally important. The ability to learn and learn quickly became important. You can't be grumpy. You can't, resist. You have to embrace it. And, sometimes I think when I ask him questions about it, it's like, well, I wanted you to be well-rounded. Or I didn't want you to get too comfortable in the grocery store. Or I wanted you to realize what maybe hard work was. And so he always had a purpose. And, I think that was huge. But by contrast, my mom, she worked in the business as well. And so, like, when we'd be there late at night, waiting to close up, my mom did a lot of the finance and book work. And, like, I'm there. So, like, here, count down, get the registers ready for morning. Here, go through this, make sure that that it ties out. So debits, credits, all that stuff it was learned over years of just being around the business. And, at that point, you're just spending time with your family. It's not really work, but some days it was like, hey, if you help, we get out of here, we go home faster or whatever. But a lot of those things, I think, that adaptability to change, that playing whatever role was needed day in and day out to help the team, those were all really, really vital things. And in addition to the grocery store, they had a catering business and a butcher shop. And so, the dynamicism of the different channels of the business, like, selling is different in those different types of businesses, and customer facing versus maybe back office, and just how to adapt quickly in the moment, while still taking care of the customer at a very high level, So
That's great. I mean, adaptability is so important. We just had a handful of interns start with us earlier this week, and that was I surveyed. I think I surveyed you, and I surveyed a handful of other executives that I'm pretty close with, and adaptability came up more times than anything else. And so it's funny because we both do real estate. I would think probably one of the most important traits within, I guess, any company really, but within real estate and the cycles that we go through and all of the different asset classes that are out there now. And you guys do a fantastic job in retail and so many other things, but is adaptability. How do you apply adaptability to your role now, right? You're chief executive officer of WMG, and you're overseeing all these people. You're responsible for a lot of families. You're responsible for a lot of dollars. But at the end of the day, every day is different. And we don't know when a Venezuela is going to come up, or if, X, Y, or Z could happen tomorrow. And so we have to be ready to adapt. And I think that's so important. How do you think about that in the position that you're in today, specifically around family office, real estate, and all the folks that you're responsible for?
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, it becomes your DNA. It has to, in order to be willing to test your systems, ask yourself, can we be doing it better? How are we doing compared to our competitors is one comparison. It's a relative standard. But instead, what do we want to become, and what would we have to change about who we are in our business in order to get there? Businesses change not by major catalysts. They're micro changes of the individuals in the organization moving towards a vision set, right? And so small changes each day lead to those monumental shifts over time. And if you wait too long to make those small changes, then it's like you got to push it through, and it's a lot more difficult. So one of the things that we do is, we do weekly huddle with the team, updates, culture, shout outs on people who displayed culture at a high level. And the point is, it's like reflection on that, and at the same time, people see, okay, that's rewarded, that's rewarded, that's rewarded. And those are the small changes that can be made, and those are the celebrations that we can talk about. I mean, I think even on the technical side, we've developed in over, I think last I counted or had them provide me the information at one point, but it's like over 345 different municipalities we've developed in. If you're not ready to be adaptable and change going into that many municipalities, it's going to be a challenge, and that's one of the ways in which we've been successful is being ready to adapt, and then as we look at our customers, like we can have an out of the box service, right, and product, like, hey, this is what we provide, but what the team tries to do is tailor that and say, hey, this is our out of box service, but how would you like to receive your updates? What things are important for you for this project? And when you're delivering over 100 openings a year, it becomes important to make sure you're tailoring your communication and delivery to the customer needs. And just because you did it one way doesn't mean that's the same way the next time. And so constantly just that feedback loop to make sure that you're adapting and tailoring it to the needs of the customer has been part of what I've said is it builds relationships, it builds trust, and it builds repeat business for people that say, hey, I can trust that you're going to listen to me and make a change so that we can be better together,
People want authentic relationships. They want authenticity from their partners. They want clarity, transparency. And I think, in a world of AI and a lot of scripted content and all kinds of things, the more that you can tailor the message, the experience to your customer, to your partner, whoever it is, just creates a stronger bond. But I think it's often overlooked. So
yeah, I agree.
Focused on that. You mentioned something. I think you said 345 or 350 municipalities. Give us some background on, Heartland and the journey into WMG, into what you're doing now, because that's quite a journey. Refresh us on how many years you've been doing this, but to go from small town farm to what you've been building on the real estate side didn't happen overnight, obviously. But give some background on Heartland, what that was, what the vision for it was, what it became, and how it's catalyzed everything that you're doing now.
Yeah, that's great. You just kind of give me a little. I just took inventory of like where I've been, but yeah. So grew up in the grocery store, went to college, did manufacturing engineering. Then I went to agriculture, raising swine and grain farming, and then into dental. And so the family office, the family founded Heartland Dental. I think when I started 15 years ago, it was probably in the high 200s of supported offices. Fast forward to today, I think it's 2,000. So a lot of growth in the last 15 years. But Heartland Dental supports the business functions of dentists so that they can focus on what they went to school for, which is the clinical side of dentistry. And throughout my time there, I spent time in development. So, really going out and doing site selection and finding locations for new dental offices. Operations, I spent time in operations. I spent time in recruiting. I think in the time of recruiting, we were maybe over 3,000 people on an annualized basis we hired. It was just a time of explosive growth. That might have been the job where I was, oh, this is a lot. This is I don't know if I can do this for a long term. But through that, it was a high growth phase. We had, equity partners coming in at different times. And, really, I think that adaptability and role playing whatever role was needed, those characteristics I was talking about, those really came out. But it was like, hey, I'll do it. I'll roll up my sleeves. We'll get it done. And it really wasn't as much about the technical knowledge of what it was in operations and recruiting, et cetera. It was, the ability to kind of learn and understand and then create decisive action. I remember like, okay, what do I need to know to go into this role in operations? Well, I remember having I don't even know tooth numbers. I have to learn my tooth number, right? So now when I go to the dentist, I say, hey, tooth number 8. And they're like, oh my gosh, why are you telling me the number?
How many teeth do we have again?
Yeah, exactly. So I think those types of things were experiential to me because I love learning. And I think that's something I mentioned to you the other day about the intern. It's like, make sure they know that school ends, but learning doesn't. But I think as we continue to grow the business and we had a majority share transaction at Heartland, I think that's the point when we began to formalize the family office and there's various team members that were doing all sorts of things. But my calling was to come be a part of the family office. Really formalized it at that point, that's been going strong for almost 8 or 10 years now, and just a very diversified array of things to do, including philanthropic efforts and so forth. And I just love that dynamicism. I think it goes back to those early days in that grocery store of things coming at you, and it's like I find myself in a comfort zone when I have all sorts of different topics that I get to touch day in and day out. And that feeds me pretty well.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I was at a dinner earlier this week with a dear friend who we're looking to partner with, who has an incredible company that he's done very well with, but it's in that extreme growth phase. It's a consumer brand. It's a retailer. They have physical footprint, and they're looking to start doubling every year in big numbers. And then I've got another friend. I've got a couple friends that have done this. So I'm realizing this as we talk. Chris Tomaso at First Watch, who's they're opening a new store every day. It seems like. Mm-hmm. Blake Goodman, who's a good friend and a partner of ours, who was the guy that helped the real estate at Chick-fil-A go west of the Mississippi and explode. So I'm realizing I have a very common thread with some friends. But I have a question for you. When you were there, you got in around 200 or whatever the number was. It went up to 2,000. You were in a lot of different hats and seats and perspectives in the organization. What were the things that you felt a lot of people will stub their toe going from 200 to 2,000? Most of them don't make it through those waters. What was, some of the secret sauce or some of the learnings and reflection that allowed you to be successful to get through those waters? Because most people don't survive that.
The people. I mean, there were so many great people that were there long before I was, and it was like, there's just a culture of we're doing some great work here. We're expected to do this at a much bigger level. And, the culture there and the investment into people has been remarkable. You probably see these colorful chart behind me here, but it isn't just something I grabbed a marker and sketched up, but it comes from Dr. Gerald Bell and Bell Leadership Institute. They're out of Chapel Hill, but they're a major part of building the personality and leadership skills of the individuals, so that we could continue to level up and grow the business. Private equity, you hear these terms like fresh legs and some of these types of things. Well, sometimes it's because the business outgrows the skill sets of the individual, and the individual has to work and practice each and every day to build those skills to stay relevant. You think about what do they call the red queen? But sometimes you have to run really, really hard, and you're still in the same spot in the fast growing companies, and your skills have to level up. And I think Pat Bauer, the CEO of Heartland Dental, I think he was on a podcast here not too long ago, and he and I were at I chatted briefly with him at the winter conference, and it was like, if I don't focus on building my skills each and every day, they will replace me, because they need someone who can continue to grow that. And I think that was a big thing for me. My wife would tell you I'm a heck of a lot better husband after working on all those things.
Wow. Well, how do you level? I mean, so it's interesting. So he said the people, which makes so much sense, right? So you can't get there without people. Talking about leveling up as the company grows that much. I've been a part of some major organizations that have gone through that exponential growth. Sometimes the founders or the people that were there early are great, incredible people, but they're not the people that can, be there when it's dramatically different and larger. How do you personally, or how have you seen others level up to stay relevant? Like you mentioned that conversation with the CEO. How is he leveling up and staying relevant? Because it's tough. It's hard to do that as you grow.
It is. It takes an immense amount of discipline. And, one of my beliefs is it's a practice. And so, your work's never done. You're going to mess up. You're going to take days off. You're not going to feel well. You're going to get a lack of sleep. Whatever all those things are. But it's a practice. And so you have to get in the rhythm of knowing what it is and doing it day in, day out. And what is it? It's looking at your own strengths and weaknesses, ranking them in prioritized order, and focusing on where you can make the biggest movement. If I go through and I come up with an exhaustive list, and okay, here's 10, 15 weaknesses I know I have, and I got to get better at it. Well, okay, let's code them. Are there some of them that are similar? And then let's rank them and prioritized order. And then let me go ask my wife. And then let me go ask some people that really know me well for the feedback, right? It's like, okay, hey, I'm not going to say anything, but I want your feedback. Yeah. But then you the most critical piece of that weakness to focus on in order to make an advancement and a change in your growth. And I think that is one of the things that, growing up and even younger years in my career, boy, if I wasn't getting it, it was like, well, it's not working. Or if I took a week off from doing my daily homework to try to grow these skills, I got frustrated. And then another year went by and I was like, hey, I still got that weakness. And I think being okay with saying, I forgot today, or I took 2 days off. Okay, where do I get right back on and keep practicing? And a lot of it also has to do with vulnerability within your leadership team. One of the things I love to do is have myself and other team members share what are the things you're working on, and then ask permission or give permission to say, hey, when you see me doing these things, I'm trying to work on them. So give me direct feedback, because, self-awareness in the moment can be difficult, especially when you're all trying to rally around getting a problem solved or an opportunity obtained. And it's like, oh, hey, yeah, hey, Curt, you're doing that one thing. Ah, dang it. Thanks for calling me out. I got you. And that breeds trust and authenticity, like you're talking about, and it builds a better cohesive leadership team while you're practicing the skill building. And that sort of rhythm, when it starts working in harmony, you become unstoppable. Really, it's fun. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, that gave me an idea for my leadership team. That's great stuff. Going back to WMG and so Heartland Dental, you had the kind of the liquidity event that you started contemplating or developed the family office. I think this is going to be really resonate with a lot of folks. Talk us through that period of time. I don't know where you are in the organization, at that time, but Dr. Workman's getting ready to have a large, life-changing liquidity event. And so, how are you involved in that? How is he thinking about that? And what were some of the things that you guys were trying to surround yourselves, whether through learnings with peers or otherwise, as you really looked to catalyze and stand up a family office? And what did that mean to you then? And what has changed since then? Because I think there's a lot that people kind of conceptualize, and then as they get into it and start doing it, it becomes quite different than anything they ever envisioned would happen.
Yeah, and probably so. One thing that was interesting, like in the agriculture company I was at before the dental company, was I was a CFO, and so CFO, finance, HR, IT, sort of those items rolled up my direction, and so I had like this sort of a little bit of flavor of everything, and so I think on the one hand, I thought, building the family office and so forth was like, okay, we got to get this is a startup business. We got to get benefits and, we got to get everybody rehired and handbooks and all this stuff. I was thinking about it like the technical side of it, and it's like, well, that's easy. The more difficult side is like, what is the philosophy and how do you work through this? And so again, relying on a lot of training, it's like, look, we really need to make sure that we're clear on the vision, mission, and core values of the family. We need to study the external environment and our internal environment. There's a lot of folks that like, when I got other friends, they like big liquidity events, and it's like their advisors or themselves, they might be thinking like, where do I go to get, returns? Where do I go to diversify? Like all these great questions, but those questions tend to be lower on the prioritized list of things to do. What's the vision and mission and core values? What's your mission for your family? What do you aspire to have for your family office in 20, 30 years? Then we can kind of go out and talk about the external environment. Then we can build a strategy, and then we can begin to execute on the strategy. And I think so many times those things aren't done early enough. And so then the liquidity comes, and it's like hot potato. We got to get these dollars reinvested. And that's important, and a lot of people have done very well. I've also seen, it's like, well, liquidity, okay, we got this fund going. Hey, we got this. Hey, we got this. Hey, before long, it's like you got 20 things. You're now more illiquid than you were before, perhaps. And it's like, hey, I'm not really in control of the outcomes, and I was in control of the outcomes more so before. And so there's just a big dynamic shift in all sorts of directions for these things. And so I think what I would say I've done multiple times, and even then when I saw it, I was like, I got ahead for my own family office, saying, okay, what's the family vision, mission, core values? What are we rallying behind, and what do we hope to do, and what impact do we want to leave on our communities that we touch, and so forth, and that begins to guide us. And so even in my work and in the family office that I manage, in my personal family office, it's very similar characteristics that I believe are most important, and they're not perfect, but it's a pretty good framework. And then when you have kids, like I do, I have 3, it's like, okay, so hey, we're going to give this much money away this year. How would we go about deciding where and how much? Do you know how many experiences I've had in my career where, it's like, hey, would you give to this? Hey, would you give to this? Hey, we're doing this. Hey, would you give to this?
All the time.
All great missions.
Mm-hmm.
But then you wake up one day and you're like, man, actually, I wish I would have furthered, cancer research as an example, but I didn't have that opportunity. And now I'm already fully allocated because I said yes. And it's like one of those things where it's like, hey, let our mission guide us. And then we can place what we give in that direction. And hey, when you got a tough decision, hey, when you want to make an investment, then there's a thesis by which they can be guided. We'll build it into a strategic plan where we're coaching, hey, there's cash flows, there's illiquid investments, there's all these things. And I think that tailoring comments that we talked about, the adaptability, you have to understand your family office. There's one thing I know. I haven't seen two family offices the same, and I've worked with dozens. And they all have their needs, and they're different. Some still have operating businesses where they have cash flow, right? Some don't. That's a material change. I love it. Sorry, I keep going on this really, but I love it because I talk to some and it's like, hey, we've got this much in assets, and so we're looking at it, we're under levered. Well, now hold on a second, because a lot of those assets might be non-income producing. Maybe they're collections, maybe it's art, maybe it's homes. So if you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, but can you service the debt? And if you're servicing the debt, are you using liquidity or cash flow or dividends? And so there's like this new discussion that has to evolve, because traditional markers and metrics don't always work when you're trying to build long-term, generational legacy funds through family offices or future building for future generations.
Yeah, you took it away that I was going to go anyway, so thank you for that. So, we're different in a couple of regards, but one, we exited primarily that operating business that allowed us our liquidity event. And so we had a bit of a blank canvas. We obviously had pedigree and experience in a certain sector, in the investment sector. But we could choose our own path. We could go allocate, and we did not have that income in the way that we did before. And then there's some that have, that operating business still attached and that pedigree. And so I'm curious from your perspective, knowing an industry, being in an industry, having an operating company like you guys had, was it difficult to then say, hey, blank canvas, we can go do whatever we want? To your point, you have to be measured with it. You have to start to define what is it you actually want to accomplish. But from an investment perspective, how did you guys think about, it's hard for some people to get out of the sector that they've known, either generationally or for their entire career. How did you guys think about going into different vertices, if you did at all?
Yeah, look, I think we, for the most part, we stayed pretty core to what was working, right? And I would say, through the transitionary phases, one of the biggest pieces was, if you think about Heartland Dental, let's just go back to that for a minute. These dental offices were being put in retail locations decades ago, when people are starting to look at it and say, now, why is a dental office going into a retail setting? Right? They were, in an office park or what have you. And I think, there was early days where it's like the developers at the time is like, I don't know what the credit is. I can't underwrite this tenant. I don't know if I want to do a build-to-suit for them, right? And true sense of thinking, it's like, I don't know if I can get my money back, or whatever. And so it was like, well, if we took chips off the table selling some of the operating business, well, let's just go ahead and put money into real estate. We'll go ahead and build those locations, and we'll have a symbiotic relationship. And that started before my time. But one of the things that we had done is we've kept the real estate. It really wasn't desired to stay inside of the core operating business. And so we said, hey, we'll keep doing what we can to grow the dental footprint. And on average, we've probably delivered about 40% of their new locations each year for the last 10, 15 years. I know those are the statistics. And, some point in there, it's like, I tell you what, I was probably about 35, and I'm like, okay, I need more action. Remember what I said earlier about, like, I like when a bunch of different stuff's coming at me.
Don't put Curt right in front of a computer and give him the same thing every day. I got that.
Yeah, that would be tough for me. I got to be honest, that'd be tough for me. But it was like, I think we can do more. And we had done a grocery store, we had done a bank, but it wasn't our core business. And we said, you know what, let's not go try to invest and do and buy. And we could have bought other businesses and scaled them, right? We could have done all these different things. It's like, hey, let's try this because we're already significantly allocated. We already have talent in the market. And so let's work our network and see how it goes. And it kicked up pretty quickly. And then I made a strategic hire in 2019 with someone who had industry knowledge and relationships. And then we had a pandemic in 2020. And during that, we were well capitalized. And so there was a lot of deals that were falling through, stalled. There were customers, tenants that couldn't sign leases, and we just kept going. We're like, look, we're playing the long game here, and we trusted a lot of people on their word. Some of our customers, like, I can't sign leases. We've been told we can't sign leases. Like, is the site approved? Yeah. Do you love it? Yeah. But you know what? We believe this pandemic's going to pass, and we'll deliver for you. So we'd close on the dirt. We'd go ahead and have it ready, and then when you can sign the lease, we'll start site work and go vertical. And we did a lot of those things, at a time where I wouldn't say we were unique, but we were well capitalized. We had great talent and intellectual capital, and it was like, I think we'll be okay in the long haul. And had we been playing the short game, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, probably wouldn't have worked. But when we said, hey, look, we're building a real estate portfolio in a development company that's going to be here for 100 years, vision, mission, it ended up turning out really good. And I think it kept us from getting distracted by trying to reallocate into different asset classes.
Yeah. And so that was basically what was born was WMG, right? Basically, yeah. That right. And so
we rebranded. We had a different real estate company. It was PRD, short for Professional Resource Development. We rebranded and relaunched. WMG stands for Workman Management Group, which is the main company, and then WMG Development was the real estate company that spun off from that.
And so what are you guys focused on today? I mean, obviously you've got the DNA and the lineage there at Heartland and started developing, I assume, like you said, small out parcels, build to suits, getting bigger and bigger. And now you guys are everywhere. I mean, I see your signs everywhere here in Central Florida. It's all over the Southeast. I know the country. Where are you guys focused now as a development shop, as a real estate company? How large are you? And what, is it still just predominantly retail? Like what asset classes within commercial real estate are you most focused on here as we get into 26 and the back half of the 2020s?
Yeah. So it's been fun being a part of this. And like I said earlier, I was talking about people, and, the people here have been fantastic. We have about 50 team members in our family office, and 42 to 44 are primarily focused on the real estate activities. We have planning and entitlements on staff, engineering, architects, and a lot of great development folks. So we have two core strategies. One is our nationwide retail development platform. So we're doing grocery anchored shopping centers, single and multi-acre developments with retail, banks, dental offices, quick service restaurants.
Do you trust the dental offices that are not Heartland?
Huh?
We do business with the non-Heartland ones.
You know what? I've learned in dentistry, when you're in pain, you'll go to one of the closest places or the places that'll see you the fastest. But yeah, so there are a lot of Heartland supported practices, and I happen to have went to several in my time, but yeah, I've got a good one here in Central Florida. But that retail development is predominantly southeast, but we're doing projects everywhere. So what I'd say is we have sort of an aggressive approach in the southeast, in particular Florida, on driving that retail growth. As you get through the Midwest and the West, out to Arizona as an example, the volume is less, and it's more. I'll say sometimes it's more tenant driven. Hey, can you go help us out here? And right now we're still sort of making our way that direction. We have resources in Texas. We have resources in the Midwest. One of our offices in the town of Effingham, Illinois, where a lot of this started, and then our second core strategy is what we call our legacy development program, and it's been something that we've sort of just remained opportunistic, and now in that program we have a Waldorf Astoria residential tower that's going to be going up in downtown Sarasota. We're really excited about that. So it'll be 86 units. Yeah.
Being from
I got unit for sale if you're interested.
Yes.
So we're really excited about that. In fact, I was in New York last week for an immersion training meeting with the Hilton and Waldorf Astoria folks. Just a fantastic group of individuals we've got together here on this project. We also have a 120-acre mixed-use development going in Central Florida. Think anything from medical to retail to some housing and hospitality. Very, very large development. We're excited about that. And then there's about 2 or 3 more very similar that I can't mention quite yet, but that's really starting to become a separate, vertical within the WMG Development umbrella. One of the big things that we've been careful with, though, is what we don't want to do is we don't want to start doing the large projects and slow down the flywheel on maybe a 1 acre out parcel. It takes all of it, and so we have several development zones sort of based geographically, developers that manage those zones. Some of them, one of our developers started as an accountant years ago. One was an intern, and we've helped build these people into developers in different markets like the Carolinas and Georgia, Alabama, Panhandle. And really what we're seeing is, that retail flywheel is going. We, like my history, help build some teams, scale them, put systems in, and you got great people. Sometimes I'm like, hey, do you need any help? And they're like, nope, just keep cheering us on. Okay, I got you. And then, but this legacy development program, I think, is a nice accoutrement. It's supplemental to what we're doing, and our mission is, at the end of the day, to create positive and lasting impacts on the communities we touch throughout the country. And so we believe very, very, very strongly in designing and developing high quality products and services for those folks that need our services. And if we provide a great experience, then they ask for more, right? And so that's a lot of what we're doing. We don't try to be too flashy. We do have a lot of signs out. That's the marketing department for you. But we just like to do good work, kind of thinking back to my core, growing up in that grocery store, have a strong work ethic, help where you're needed, be kind and courteous to your customer, carry out their groceries when they need it. And those are just simple things sometimes, but when you start to apply it on a bigger scale, you find out that you can deploy 200 to 300 million a year in development and produce some really cool results. And we celebrate it here. Like when we see a post online and somebody says like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for a coffee shop in my neighborhood for a very long time. I'm so glad this is open. It's like, yeah, that's a win, right? That's a win for us, and so that's been exciting.
You just mentioned something that's very important to us, and I think we have a thread here in common. So, our team's been working on what we believe are deeply impactful projects in communities, anchored by what I believe is one of the most impactful things that you can do to a community to unite them, and that's through professional sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on a number of sports anchored districts around the country. And you talk about the impact that a sports team can make. Some people, for the vanity purposes, kind of shrug that off. But in terms of truly uniting a community and then giving them the resources and the places to commune and to celebrate and to experience, I think it's something that I'm obviously really excited about. You guys were in the news earlier last year, I guess, about a recent transaction on the sports side. Is there anything that you can share there for the audience on what may have interested you guys into that and how you're thinking about that from the family office perspective?
You know what? Professional sports. I've gotten like front row seat to it here recently. Let's
No
say.
pun intended.
Yeah, pun intended. Exactly, man. Like underwriting teams, spending time talking to some of my friends. One of my childhood friends, he's with the Giants organization. I actually got to catch up with him here at the winter meetings, and we're in Orlando last month, and so. But you know what? Yeah, so we've been. I'll say sniffing around this and trying to really understand professional sports and where the opportunities lie, and so this the Tampa Bay Rays have found a new spot. There's not too much I can share, Marley, but I'm really excited for the future. Ironically enough, I was on the phone earlier on a call with Rashawn Williams and talking about some of the very same things. And really what's going on in professional sports related real estate opportunities. I'm super excited for the Tampa Bay Rays, and I know the team there is looking to make some great decisions, and they're all involved at a very high level. But professional sports at large, I mean, what you're talking about is the intersection of family and entertainment and competition, and it's some of the very foundational work of America, right? Like coming together in one spot. And when you think about what you're talking about, it is the way of the future, and I'm really excited to be a part of it in more ways than one. Our development companies, standing by. Hopefully we can help do a project with you on this side of things. Our architects were instrumental and designers instrumental in the battery. And so we look to a lot of those inspirational projects to see how this is all going to roll out over the next 20, 30 years,
Yeah, I love that. Well, I know we have to wrap up here soon. I like to close with kind of reflectionary type of questions. They're open-ended. Sometimes they're cheeky, sometimes they're not. But you're still a young man. You've got a great, beautiful family, young family. You've got an amazing business. Actually, business is plural. You're kind of in stride. And what over the next 5 or 10 years, and I know it's hard to think about that sometimes, but what does winning look like in this next season of life for you personally and professionally?
Yeah. So personally, I've got to figure out how to work out more and be healthier. It's like, boy, if I got an extra hour where I put on my calendar, go running, I fake it, and then all of a sudden I'm writing ideas down because I got a half mile down the road, and I'm like, I got to stop running because these ideas are coming out. So I got to figure out how to mix in the health aspect, to increase my ability to produce over the long haul. If I don't do that, take care of myself, getting good sleep, good exercise, then it'll shorten the lifespan in which I can produce good results. So I know that's important. I also think on the personal side, one of my big goals is to increase my mentorship and or ability to help. And like I said, it's a practice. I'm still learning. I'm not sitting here saying I'm the expert in everything. That's not what I'm saying. But there's someone somewhere who's trying to get through that next ceiling, next level. And, if I can talk with someone, if I can spend time, if I can do things like this with you, and somebody takes a nugget away that gets them that next level up, I love doing that because it's how we all work as a society, as a community, and I've got 3 kids, 2 of them in college. And so, they get the ability to be a part of that mentorship. Maybe they don't want it. I don't know. But that is some of the things that are important to me on the personal side. Professionally, when you think about growing businesses and you think about your investment in time, effort, energy, emotion, all the things, one of the biggest things over the next 5 to 10 years is just really to ensure that what we're doing here at WMG Development on the real estate side is sustainable beyond me. I don't want it to be dependent on whether or not I'm waking up every day and showing up for work. And I mean that with a sense of love and compassion for the mission that we're on. This is meant to be sustainable. This is meant to be a 100-year company. And I think we're there. I think we just have to keep going and test it and so forth and make sure that, all these folks are growing their skills so they can be the leader at the next point in time. And also professionally, I had this idea of significant, you needed or wanted a family office when you had significant levels of wealth, right? Whatever you define significant levels of wealth. There's this sort of paradigm lock where everybody's like, well, if I got this much, well, if I get to this point, then I need to start building out this family office structure. And at some point I'm like, wait a second. I mean, the principles are the same, whether it's $1 or 1 billion. And so what we've done, I'll say personally crossed over professionally, is we've started making those decisions. And so, I really see this continued effort that I've had in putting investments into different asset classes, not just as as an allocation, but as a value add opportunity. And so, when you think about professional sports as an example, and you're in real estate, there's a partnership that can occur. Doesn't have to. But those are strategics. Those are aligned in parallel to the core business, and so I think this crossover of entertainment and sense of place will be a part of the professional journey for us. Hopefully, doing some with you, like I said, and others, because it's here, and I think it speaks so deeply to our culture here.
Well, if that day before New Year's Eve resolution and list they were coming up with, and I was on that list to do something in 2026, then I'm all for it. Let's do it, baby.
You're right. You know what? I had so many things coming out of my mind. I moved some to 27 to make room for you, man.
Okay, good. Awesome. Sure, man, appreciate you, man. It's so good to see you. You've been such a great friend over the last couple of years. Any way that I can ever be helpful, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story, and we'll chat next time.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.